Hello, and welcome to Vlad's Super Science Slam. Alright, today we'll be talking about biospheric hotspots, and today's biospheric hotspot will be the Florida Everglades. The Everglades is home to a vast array of plants and animals that have adapted to wet subtropical environments. Some creatures such as the Florida panther, wood stork, and West Indian manatee have become symbols of a struggling ecosystem. Other parts of this vast mosaic, most notably the sawgrass marshes and cypress and mangrove forests, are recognized around the world as images of the region. While some of the flora and fauna are widely recognized, the Everglades also is comprised of many hundreds, if not thousands, of lesser-known plants, animals, and fish that are part of a living, dynamic ecosystem. The river of grass includes wetland plants, trees, and marsh vegetation, invertebrates, fresh and saltwater fish, amphibians, reptiles, mammals, and birds. Some 67 species are on the federal threatened or endangered lists. Many more are rare species of a special concern or include on state's list. A brief overview of selected Everglades plants and animals species follows. The Everglades is comprised of more than 100 marsh species that live in water all or much of the year. Its most well-known wetland plant is sawgrass, a normally hardy grass-like species that has formed thousands of acres of marshes. Floating aquatic plants that dominate the waterscape include bladderwort, white water lily, spatterdock, and maiden cane. Living among these is one of the tiniest members of the Everglades plant community, periphyton algae. The base of food webs, algae floats in mats on or just below the water surface and is found throughout the Everglades. In addition, the aquatic ones, other plants in the Everglades live in wetland tree islands and upland hardwood hammocks that dot the landscape. Tree islands are small forests of trees and shrubs that have adapted to wet environment. They provide an important home to that many mammals that live in the Everglades and are a site of wading and migratory bird rookeries. Tree islands generally are named after the trees that dominate them, with the most common the bay, willow, and cypress. Cypress is probably the most recognized tree in the Everglades and includes the dwarf and bald species. The cypresses require water to develop, and they can live on either dry land or in water as mature trees. They have unusual root system producing knees that grow out of the earth, which scientists think are used for breathing. Cypress trees shed their leaves in the fall, somewhat unusual in a subtropical environment. Another interesting tree found in the islands is the pond apple, which produces large, bitter, yellow-green fruit. Pond apples are a food source for some animals. Trees also exist in the Everglades in hammocks, which are localized, mature hardwood forests, unlike the tree islands that are dominated by wetland species. Hammocks can have trees that traditionally live in drier conditions, such as oak and pine. Royal palm, cabbage, palm, live oak, gumbo limbo, and West Indian mahogany are some trees that live in these tropical hardwood hammocks. Within tree islands and hammocks, visitors can find breathtaking orchids, bromeliads, and ferns. The warm, humid environment is ideal for air plants, with some of the world's most unusual and beautiful orchids found in the Everglades. Many species of tropical ferns also thrive in this environment, often found under shade trees and covering the forest floor. A keystone plant community of the Everglades, the mangrove, is a coastal plant that is known for its vast root system. Mangroves provide an interface between more saline coastal waters and freshwater marshes, help reduce soil erosion, and buffer the land from wind and waves, and build the soil through their growth and decomposition. Mangroves do not tolerate cold weather and are protected by the law. Birds are a special symbol of the Everglades. Captured beautifully in the paintings of John James Audubon, it is reported that in the 1800s there were so many migratory and wading birds that their numbers darkened the skies. Unfortunately, the wading and migratory bird population has been greatly reduced. First by hunters and more recently by the loss of habitat. Despite this, today some 350 bird species have been identified in Everglades National Park alone. Some year-round residents, other just for just visit for the winter, and still others stop by on their journey to more southern destinations. The most notable of the wading birds includes the wood stork, white and glossy ibis, the rosette spoonbill, great blue, great white, and the tricolored herons, and the snowy and great egrets. The endangered snail kite is an unusual bird that survives exclusively on the apple snail. The Cape Sable seaside sparrow, that's a mouthful, is also in the news today, as scientists and government regulators strive to preserve its quickly dwindling habitat. Many animals live in the Everglades, including the raccoon, skunk, opossum, bobcat, and white-tailed deer. But the poster child of the Everglades and the symbol of this wild, vast ecosystem is the Florida panther. It is the most endangered species in the Everglades, with only about 100 remaining in the wild. Panthers feed on deer and other animals, live in upland Everglades areas, and require large ranges. Great lengths are underway to save the panther, including radio tracking collared individuals and introducing other panther strains to increase the gene pool. Another keystone species of the ecosystem and an indicator of its health is the American alligator. The ancient reptile builds alligator holes to provide an important food and water source for many other animals in times of drought. Two other well-known animals in the ecosystem include the friendly West Indian manatee and the bottlenose dolphin, both of which live in saltwater bays and coastal areas. In 1999, the United States Fish and Wildlife Service approved a multi-species recovery plan for the threatened and endangered species of South Florida. This plan outlines a detailed program to protect the endangered threatened plants and animals of the South Florida ecosystem that includes the Everglades. It provides a detailed list of rare, threatened, endangered, and special concern species. I believe that the Everglades are being threatened right now. Species like the Burmese python has invaded the Everglades. It's a very invasive species released by bad pet owners who do not want to keep their Burmese python anymore, so they release it into the wild. You know, animals come from the wild, they go back to the wild. So I believe that this is a really bad thing because the Burmese python population has swelled beyond belief. I've actually seen pictures of a Burmese python fighting an American alligator. And that says something. That says that a Burmese python is something to be something real, something surreal, that it's just impossible to fathom that a snake could fight an alligator. And if this continues, the alligator population is not growing as fast as the Burmese python. The Burmese python is taking all of the American alligator's food, all of its prey. So as the Burmese python population grows, the American alligator begins to drop, and slowly enough, the Burmese python will overtake the American alligator. And the Burmese python is not the only threat to the Everglades. Pollution and habitat loss, as mentioned in the article that I just read, I believe that we need to cut back on where we plant our homes and our houses. I believe that we should reuse other places that go for foreclosure and everything. And pollution-wise, there are programs out there that try and help protect the Everglades from pollution, like cleanups, prevention, government projects, government laws, like the the Endangered Species Act protects all the species like the American bobcat, American panther, excuse me. And I believe that slowly through a lot of fighting and talking to senators, like the article we just read, not the article, the essay that we wrote to a senator talking about issues. Well, I wrote about biospheric hotspot, the Everglades, and the Burmese python's effect on it. And I believe that the extermination of the Burmese python from the Everglades is one of the best ideas we can ever have, because the Burmese python does not belong in... The Burmese python doesn't belong in the Everglades. I believe that it has its own habitat, but it is not the Everglades. And I believe that the Burmese python is destroying the food chain that is within the Everglades. Also, from the article that we read a while back from the brink, pollution does indirectly affect other species. As an example, in the United States, the bald eagle, the symbol of freedom for us, is quickly dwindling in population because of indirect contact with pesticides. For example, DDT was introduced to plants to kill off critters like mosquitoes and everything else that would take our harvests and just kind of pollute and spread bacteria throughout the plants that we eat. So when DDT was introduced, it indirectly began seeping into the food chain, and as bald eagles got their food and they would eat, it affected their eggs. Their eggs are very hard and hard to break, but when DDT entered their system and entered the sexual organs, the eggs became very soft. When the mother would sit on them to warm them, help them mature, the egg would break underneath her, and that just hit the bald eagle population right in the face. And I believe that preventing all these things and helping our environment help us is the way we can protect the earth. This has been Vlad with your Super Science Slam. Peace out.